Salam. How are you? So, banking is underwater. Banking's in trouble. Banks are boring. They suck, right? Yeah. What's happening to the banking industry at the moment? You know, this global financial crisis where, like, do we trust banks anymore? Not really. You know? Banks used to be a safe place to put your money. It used to be a place where you knew you could trust a banker to look after you. Okay, you get a little bit of interest for your money. All the rules have changed. It doesn't work like that anymore. Banks can go under. Banks can disappear. Banks are not, they don't really know the economy. We thought bankers knew what they were doing, right? Now we're not so sure about that. In fact, we're not happy with the way banks work anymore. We're getting out in the streets and whether it's New York, whether it's London, whether it's Moscow, we're saying these banks are ripping us off. We can't trust them. This Occupy movement has sort of taken the world by storm. People getting on the street saying there's inequality. It doesn't work right for us anymore. Even right here in Turkey, we have the Occupy movement. But you know, in Turkey, we do it a little bit different. When we do the Occupy movement in Turkey, we take over a Starbucks and we have coffee all night, right? This just happened 2 days ago at this university. But what's happening in this Occupy movement is consumers are finding their voice. They're saying, if you're a bank, we're going to put you on notice that you better look after us, that you better be a bit more transparent. You can't just charge these fees unless I know what I'm getting back for them. There has to be some value. I have to be able to trust you that you're doing the right thing, not that you're going to be using my money for these, all this subprime mortgages and all these things. There's all this mystery about what bankers do. This is not good enough anymore. We live in a transparent world. Now, the problem is that if you look at the way traditionally we approach this banking market, banks will stand there and they'll say, we're the best bank. You can trust us. But how do you differentiate a bank today? How do you choose a bank? How do customers choose a bank to work with? Which of these banks differentiates? Well, bankers would tell you that how they differentiate is on their rate, on their product, on their network, how many branches they have. But does rate really differentiate anymore? These are the messages that we'd send out, the old mechanism of advertising and marketing and talking about ourselves as banks if we're in this game. We'd say, you can trust us. But we don't trust you anymore. We'd say, we've got the best rate. But really, 1.19% interest? It's not very interesting, is it? And then we'd send out direct mail and all these ads and we'd say, we're a great bank, you can trust us. It just doesn't work like that anymore. So how do we engage with banks as consumers now? Well, it's very different. Today, we're in control. We go to Google and we search in Google and we can see side by side the different banks, the interest rate they charge, all of these things that traditionally banks would think they'd differentiate on. But which of these banks differentiates? Which of these banks stands out to you? Well, none of them. Not on interest rate. Not on something like that. So how do you stand out in the crowd in this type of environment? Because in the past, what banks would do is they'd send out all these newspaper ads and TV commercials and radio and billboards and all this stuff, and then they'd say, you can trust us, come to us. And then what happens? You go to a bank, you walk into a branch, and they give you the stack of papers, and they say, all right, fill out all of your details, and maybe, if we like you, we might let you be a customer. They put all these barriers in. They make it really tough, don't they? You want to take a loan from a bank? It's not exactly an easy process. You want to open a bank account? You need all these identification forms. The banks have put all this friction in front of us. Simplicity is what we value today, not complexity. So how do we find one of these banks to go for? Well, we search. We go to search. But Google's the #1 search engine on the planet. We know that. But what's the #2 search engine on the planet? Do you know? Turns out it's YouTube. YouTube is the world's 2nd largest search engine. And that makes sense because the younger generation, they'll go and watch a video rather than go visit a website. That's how they'll find out about brands. We've seen some of that viral stuff this morning. So what happens when you go to YouTube and you search on a bank? When you type in banking in Turkish, you get videos that have nothing to do with the banks in terms of branding or marketing or advertising. You get user-generated content. You get a story about someone getting a surprise in a branch, or a conspiracy theory about how banks are manipulating the society. This is when you search in the Turkish language. What happens if you type in Bank of America? Well, the results. Debtors, Bank of America, why Bank of America fired me, Occupy Santa Cruz. This is not exactly good marketing, is it? But see, with Google, we've got used to the fact that we can buy a search result. We call this search engine optimization. But YouTube is advocacy. The results that come to the top of the tree in YouTube are the most popular videos, what people like to watch. And anyone can get their video up there, as evidenced by Peter's 400 million bit my finger videos. How do you communicate in this world? How do you drive the message or the conversation? It's very different to the old rules. These two girls are Elle and Blair Fowler. What they do is they go shopping, they go down to the shopping mall, they buy some clothes, some jewelry, some cosmetics, and they come back and they record a video on YouTube about their haul, about their shopping experience. Sounds pretty simple. But Blair Fowler, who's the more popular of the two sisters, her YouTube handle is JuicyStar07. She gets on average 1.7 million views per video she runs. Every week or so she puts a video up. 1.7 million views. So for a teenage girl in America looking for clothes, for jewelry, cosmetics, Blair Fowler can do more to sell a product than any TV commercial, newspaper ad, billboard that you can ever spend your money on. How do you get her to talk about your brand? If you're a bank, she's not going to talk about your bank, is she? Because why? Because banking is irrelevant to her. The way banks used to work doesn't make any sense to her. She doesn't get it. What does a bank say? If you want to open an account, they say you have to come down the branch and sign a piece of paper. Someone of Blair Fowler's generation is going to go, what? What do you mean I have to come to a bank, sign a piece of paper? Are you serious? Why can't I just sign up online? This conversation is changing the context. Now, how this is starting to affect the way we choose businesses that we're going to work with, brands, consumer brands, products and services, is that we're soon going to start to see all of search become contextual and based on the crowd. So our friends, what they like and what they say is a good brand or a good bank or a good product, this is going to be reflected in search results. And this is the thing. I'm going to trust what my friends say in the crowd over what you tell me in an advertisement every single time. You can't compete as an advertiser with what my network tells me in respect to a brand. So how do you get the network to talk about you positively? How do you get customers to say you're a good brand to work with? You have great products. Well, the only way to do that is actually be a good service provider. Have good products. You can't now have bad products and try and convince people that they're worth buying. You now can't have bad service and tell people